Hey guys, welcome back to the Another Excuse podcast. I'm your host, Byron, and today's guest is Veronica Brits, the founder of Feedflex Creatives. Feedflex Creatives is a company that focuses on driving creative and media teams into full automation and digital transformation. They use data-driven strategies to build feed structures for audience targeting and custom ad scripts. In our conversation, we learn all about Feedflex Creatives and how the business works. We talk about finding your purpose and motivation, the future of work and where AI is taking us, and the role of mentors in Veronica's career. It's a really interesting conversation. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. Enjoy the show. Hey, Veronica, thanks so much for joining me today. Just to kick us off, could you tell us a bit about Feedflex Creatives and how it all works?
Yeah, sure. Byron, thank you so much for having me. It's really good to be here. So just to get us started, Feedflex Creatives is really driving your creative and media teams into full automation and digital transformation. We focus on true data-driven strategies. Everything is centered around how we build out feed structures to activate audience targeting, as well as custom ad scripts behind your publisher strategy. So like a micro website for more accurate targeting. In addition to that, kind of building our dynamic frameworks, we also have built the FeedFlex Bridge, which is a microservice methodology that creates an educational structure to bridging a lot of your traditional creative and media teams into big data skill sets.
Wow. Okay, there's a lot to unpack there. So, if you could just go into a bit more detail, like what sort of media are you working with? Is it directly advertising? Is it social content? How does that all work?
Yeah, it's primarily advertising. So it could be, kind of within the Meta environment, Google Ads, DV360. So kind of more focused on your direct ad strategies to customers. And what we want to look at doing is just enriching your targeting by using either internal data, external kind of third party data, but also data triggers that drives more personalization.
Great. And what exactly does automating media look like? How does that work?
So for me, it's got two facets. I think, technology is moving so quickly, we can barely see what's happening. A couple of years ago, you saw a lot of SaaS tools rolling out, addressing automation kind of at a canvas approach, drag and drop. And then comes AI, and all of a sudden we're seeing that a lot of that automation will actually push into the demand side, platform side. So bidding strategies, targeting, rotations of creatives, audience groups being selected. It's really a race to AI with the big tech components. For us at FeedFlex Creative, automation means actually activating and eliminating a lot of that mundane workflows within the constructs of your creative and media teams. Because with all that automation happening in platform and with digital rapidly kind of growing at the pace that it is, there's a complexity that takes place. So we're just here to kind of help create, feeds and scripts that breaks down a lot of those tasks that now needs to address complexity.
Awesome. And what kind of clients are you guys working with at the moment? What kind of industries?
Yeah, there's a kind of a variety. You can almost say anybody that's accessing the digital landscape, but it could be anyone kind of in the fast moving consumer goods space, hotel brands, property finders, anything that has like a service or a product component to it. We're just there to help them create more personalization behind their targeting.
Right. Awesome. And what gave you the idea to start this business?
Yeah, I'd love to say something poetic. I think I thought about this question so much when I was going over it, and I'd love to say that I felt destiny tapping me on the shoulder, but it was more like pushing me off a cliff. Everything comes from wanting to see a point of impact, and for me, I saw a real need to help teams bridge into new skill sets. I saw skill sets really becoming outdated and investment only going into technology. It's a really fine line. And I really deeply believed in what I was creating. So I pushed into it and used all my kind of years of experience to build out something that was going to address technological scale and advancement, but kind of pull the people with us.
Right. But um, Could you unpack that decision a bit more? Like, where was the stage where you decided to stop working for someone else and then start this? And why did you feel like this was a mission worth pursuing and not just working for someone else?
Then working for someone else was definitely far more comforting. And I don't know, do people choose to be entrepreneurs, or is it a calling, a destiny that they feel within themselves? Over the last 3.5 years, I've been leading, I'd say, probably over 100 data-driven strategies. And the team I was leading, we were kind of sitting in the middle between what would be traditional creative agency and traditional media managers. And we were like the awkward red-headed stepchild, coming in and being very disruptive, creating lots of discomfort, exploiting lots of insecurity and fear, because we were now asking for traditional workflows to basically have a new approach and a new look and feel to it. And I saw lots of friction and conflict and burnouts and fear kind of looming in the environments. And it kind of was the same thing that pushed me and kept me up at night to say, what type of leader am I? Where do I see myself making an impact, in my little life in this world? And I put my years of experience together to create the heart behind what FeedFlex Creative addresses.
And were there any fears in taking that leap and starting FeedFlex, or was it an easy decision for you?
No, it wasn't an easy decision. There was tons of absolute fear and intimidation, enough to paralyze me, if we can put it that way. But I really believed in it. I believed that this was at a time now, for me to, I kind of always saw myself as a thought leader. And when I was having conversations on any platform, I was always truly being quite authentic. And 15 years of corporate experience took me to this point where I looked in the mirror and I said to myself, you know what, if you're going to pick up another Simon Sinek book or Brené Brown and read it to yourself and quote this on any platform, or are you going to truly now become, that person that you see the world needs right now? So I'm kind of stepping into a space that I deeply believe in, and that I deeply see we need right now.
So you mentioned there are fears and then you took the leap. Was it just like that realization that you came to when you were reading these books and you decided, no, now I need to be someone that takes action? Or were there like smaller incremental steps that you worked towards, like maybe thinking about this on the side while you had a job and you slowly worked into it? Or was it just like, okay, I quit and now I'm starting FeedFlex? How did that work?
Yeah. No, it didn't work like that. I wish I could say it was that easy. I had certainly thought about starting a business. I did my honors degree in business, and I saw myself as somebody having the heart to kind of chase after something. I've been in sales for a long time, so I know how to work hard and face rejection. But I hit the global leadership landscapes, and some could call me naive, I guess, but I thought it to be different. I truly thought it was a place that was truly focused on human centricity, and had a real heart for looking at innovation that impacts the environment and what we need for the future. And when I have conversations with mentors, they all laugh at me, thinking, you're really completely ignorant to think that this is what it looks like. It's more of a chessboard up there, and chess pieces being moved around strategically. So I got myself into, addressing big topics, and in the spaces of addressing big topics, I would rather say I was more pushed into the context of becoming the change. So I didn't have time to plan this out or to make sure that I have enough savings. I stood at the edge of this point of, looking fear in its face and then deciding that there's no space for fear in the future. I need to do something with it.
And how did you end up in this industry?
Also by chance. I was contacted on LinkedIn by a former director in this global digital marketing agency where I was working for a couple of years. We'd been following each other over a course of a few years. He dropped me a note on LinkedIn like about 4 years ago, and he said, hey, are you ready to hit the big leagues? That's literally all he said. And I didn't make the decision immediately. It took me about 4 to 5 months to kind of have different conversations with people, because I knew nothing about digital marketing. And I watched enough agency sitcoms to know that I didn't know if this was the world I wanted to step into. But then the curiosity I have for learning kind of pushed me to take the leap, and I saw the gap. I saw the opportunity to become this bridge builder of connecting creative and media teams into new skills.
Awesome. And was that when you moved to The Hague, when you took on this new job?
Yeah, it was. I was living in Cape Town at the time, working for a software services company. Usually, originally founded in Norway, but they were expanding in Africa, specializing in social intelligence. So I was learning a lot about kind of data scraping and building out models of data or conversations of data that contribute value to a brand. I was pretty comfortable. Cape Town's such a beautiful place to live, and I'd never really traveled as much or lived abroad. But the adventurous, woman in me decided that this would be a great opportunity for me to try something new. I had some relatives living in the Netherlands, and I thought it would also be a great opportunity to kind of get back onto the same continent as them at the time. So I used multiple, kind of opportunities to get myself here.
And what was that like? Because I know it's one thing changing jobs, and it's another moving to a new country, and doing it all at the same time can be quite a lot. Like how did that go? Was it tough at the beginning? And
Yeah, it was terrifying. I had to squeeze everything into 50 kilograms, and
yeah,
it changes your perspective. I find it immensely enriching. I think I can be a very kind of deep thinker, and I used the opportunity to redefine how I valued material wealth. And I quickly identified what wasn't really particularly all that valuable to me when I selected what could come with me. I also stretched my understanding of global cultures. Being kind of traditionally Afrikaans, we were always associated with being Dutchies. And then getting to the Netherlands and realizing, we're so different to Dutch people too. So it kind of made my small idea and understanding of history just gain such deeper perspective and understanding. And I think it made me an immensely rich woman for it.
yeah, that really resonates with me because me moving to Hong Kong also sort of broadened my perspectives and completely changed my perception of a whole lot of things. So, yeah, that makes perfect sense.
I can imagine Hong Kong. It's also the East is so different to what you are like initially used to.
Yeah, it is. But at the same time, Hong Kong is like probably one of the most westernized places of that region, where everyone speaks really good English. And so I'd say it's one of the easier places to get settled in there. But yeah, at the same time, still completely different culture. People do things and prioritize things in completely different ways. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, uh,
And the food's really different. So
yeah, yeah. Um, and would you say that you've always been an entrepreneur at heart, or did this develop over time?
No, I wouldn't say I would be seen as an entrepreneur at heart. I think anybody that knows me would probably not even see me as the kind of concrete big leader in business. I mean, I naturally can be quite influential and inspiring, and I'm good at driving targets, but I never really saw myself as having what it takes to believe in so much, that you will be willing to risk everything for it. But when I got to the point of kind of launching FeedFlex Creatives and losing sleep and looking at all that comfort kind of fizzling away, I realized that actually all the points of experience in my life were always shaping me to be who I am today. And I faced many points of adversity and challenges. And every single time I kind of approached it head on, I came out for it stronger. The failures have been my biggest lesson. So I looked at FeedFlex Creatives, or the entrepreneurial mindset, as the same thing. I thought to myself, you know what, if I had enough heart to believe in what I was doing and I failed at it, at least I would learn so much when I was doing it. And I would learn from a point of more about who I am in being alive and kind of impacting my environment. So those are some of the important things you also need to look at, like how do you measure entrepreneurial wealth and success?
Yeah, I agree. But one thing I find really interesting, um, that I've experienced before is like you prove to yourself that you can face those fears head on, and you normally learn the most from them. But at the same time, it's quite difficult to apply those to different parts of your life, even though there's a track record and you've proven it to yourself that if you just like do it and take action, good things will come of it. It's still really difficult to actually do it in other aspects of your life. And so that's something I'm working on. It's like constantly reminding myself that I've done it before. It's just slightly different in this different passage or avenue and like direction I'm going in. So just like do it again. Did you ever experience that? Was that something you had to also just constantly remind yourself of?
Yeah, I think that's such cool advice, such practical advice as well, what you're saying there right now. You know, when you see the complexity, it's always about breaking it down into parts that are digestible. And if you've done portions of this before, you're actually accelerating from a point just a little further down the line. So it's never really starting anything from scratch. You're always building on top. So I've seen that. I certainly have. You know, I've transformed across 4 global industries. I've moved continents. You know, I've been at a point where I've nearly lost it all. So I think I've definitely learned that I have grit and the ability to believe in something and see it through. So, you know, why not do it again this time?
Yeah, exactly. And you touched on it a bit at the beginning, and sort of the FeedFlex Creators mission, but what motivates you at the moment?
I honestly, I'd say my faith. It's the thing that makes me look inwardly. It challenges my character. It asks me big questions about the intentions behind my heart. You know, am I looking to build a business to, you know, just make some money and get rich quick? Or am I fundamentally believing in my value systems? Like, am I looking to really empower people and teams to accelerate both innovation and humanity? And when I combine the two motivations together, I immediately see my purpose. It's like I actually know who I am, what I'm here for, and everything has a taste of meaning.
No, that's really interesting. And what lessons did you take from your previous roles, and how have you applied that or adapted it to FeedFlex Creatives?
I think the first thing that I definitely sit with every single day, and my whole message and communication is built around it, is that without clear, clean data structure, everything is going to fail. And, you know, it's easy to roll out a SaaS solution or, you know, say you're using AI, but if you don't have data culture or structured data or data skill sets or team that knows how to drive data to value, then, you know, yeah, there's no point because you're doomed. The future is data driven. Automation is foundationally just data, and AI is just quantifying data. So it's really structured data is the one thing I take forward into the business.
This might be a big question, excuse my naivety, but what does structured data look like? Like, what is structured data?
Yeah, there's a few ways to look at it, for one. But it really is just around one part could be understanding is that you could have a product feed, let's say a thousand, you know, 125,000 products, and push that through a quantified kind of mechanism that helps you automate targeting, but it will mean nothing if you don't understand who your audiences are and how the products need to speak to them. The other component is starting to create a mechanism of your kind of extraction, transformation, and learning processes. It can be how you want teams to collect different audience groups, how you structure the labels or the rows in your feeds for one component, how you speak to different conventions. So creating a structured naming convention in the business in terms of how products and services and customers are referred to, so that you also have that data feeding structurally into the environment. Activation of data, so how we create data language when we speak about creative or media workflows and building that into data-driven briefs. So there's a few components that kind of bring that together that challenges traditional workloads or methods. And what we ultimately start cultivating is when you're running specific campaigns, you're not only understanding this campaign date, this audience group, and this product, but you're also understanding what pillars are driving your structures within those activations. So you can start modeling more sophistication back into your CDP that's speaking likely to your CRM, creating the understanding of that internal audience back to the external world.
Wow, interesting. And is a lot of what you do organizing the data of clients that probably don't have good systems in place?
Big parts of the projects I've been on for sure have the biggest part was not spent on building the dynamic framework or designing the framework. It was spent on getting teams to fundamentally just understand what you're asking for and how to ask for it. Most organizations are their data is everywhere. And not only is it sitting everywhere, it's very unstructured. There's no convention to it. Accessing it and how to use it is not it's not like natural for people because they just haven't been thinking about it that way. So I think the biggest part is usually spent around how to explain to them who to speak to, how to speak to them, what to ask for, how we're going to then use that data to activate it, and what elements will then become kind of dynamically changed when we're using the data. So yeah, it's educational, very
Yeah.
big portion.
And what tool or tools are your go-to for organizing this data?
I've looked carefully at the landscape here and inside the platforms, like when you say, for example, you're building with DV360, Google platform, you can use Google Studio. But if you're working on feeds, you can use an Excel or a CSV to create the structure. That's pretty simple enough. But the data modeling, and I looked at, and I've been speaking to some business partners. Do we go BI? Do we go Tableau? How do we want to work with creating that kind of ETL layer? But then you have to start thinking about data policies, who owns it, how's the processing happening. And lots of organizations are likely using data partners or are driving their own investment in-house. So the biggest element for me was, how do I create an interface which is simple enough, using kind of HTML, so JavaScript, and then just plugging in a methodology that allows them to just go and extract what they already have and then move that into a design and development workflow. I think partnerships is the future, and working with organizations that have big data processing agreements in place to handle and take that legal responsibility for managing client data and kind of creating a easy handoff to us was the name of the game for me.
Interesting. And you mentioned future there. I'm curious, where do you see the future of work going generally?
It's going to be a very unique blend of AI, kind of data automation strategies, and flexibility. It's going to free up teams to create a lot of more ideas for innovative thinking. It's an important time for you to look at who's leading you, because it's going to challenge traditional work flows, corporate structures that average 9 to 5, the way we do things, because it's really going to completely change how we operate, where we work from, and how we work. And your leaders leading you need to have the modern thinking, and it's going to exploit a lot of that intentions deep in where the focus is for business. So it's going to be an exciting thing to see.
Yeah, yeah, it will be. But do you think, um, also with the use of AI and things like that, that it's going to, because there's this debate of, it's going to take a lot of people's jobs, and others say that it's just going to like 10x your output, and just make people more productive. What's sort of your view on the two, or are you somewhere in between?
No, I'm in the. It's definitely going to create new jobs.
Okay.
It's the jobs will be data centered, because you would need to understand how to activate the machine, and the machine just wants data. And it's definitely going to quantify your output. It's going to enhance everything that you're doing in terms of your work streams. But I think that middle part that comes in, and the fear that might be looming is, and this I mean from a really sincere place, is you need to look who your leaders are, because it's going to be determined by your leadership and their intentions. If their intentions is to 10x and to take out, that middle layer of kind of, the FTE equivalent, then you're going to be in trouble. But if you have leaders that are looking to invest in both technology and people, then you're going to advance kind of and 10x at the same time. So it really just depends on who's leading you.
Yeah, that's really interesting. An interesting take. And how, or like, what's your process in incorporating new tech into your business? Are you like constantly paying attention to what's coming out and testing it, or what's your approach?
Yeah, I am. I am constantly kind of. I think the fact that AI is open source gives everybody with a good idea the opportunity to become a startup in this time. Um, I think the only thing for me here is that I'm very cognizant about the fact that AI is maturing, and it's happening so rapidly. So it's, every 6 months we see these big incremental shifts. And I kind of am excited to see where it's going to go. I have this methodology of what I want to build. And I say nothing about it, and I don't fully commit to the investment just yet because I'm looking at where the processing is going of how we think and use data. And I'm watching data, like big tech companies roll back data policies. And even I'm sitting here thinking, okay, probably a good place to start is to stick to the basics: data culture, data activation, pushing it into automated frameworks, which we know how to do, and data culture, clean data in, clean data out. So I keep my eyes on the market, but I have a feeling that the startups we see right now might not even be around in 5 years.
Can you elaborate on that a bit? Why do you think that?
It's a race to AI. It's going to either happen like in the context of big tech spaces, or the first organization to come up with the most innovative use of AI. But I think once it gets to that point, whoever gets to the first big bright idea of AI is going to accelerate so fast past the competitor landscape. It would be almost impossible to keep up with them. I think technologies that have rolled out in terms of example, like dynamic content being scaled, generative AI. I think a lot of that currently seems like it sits outside of the context of ad serving or ad environments. It's all going to be absorbed at some point. So you'll see organizations building, big technological solutions, and then just see them being absorbed into different investment portfolios.
And do you think that, companies like Google and Meta have an unfair advantage because of how much data they have access to?
Yeah, the world's unfair. I think that's just life, I think, yeah, they do.
Yeah.
And that's just the way the cookie crumbles, unfortunately. And I mean that in a pun, but it's just the way it is.
Yeah. And why do you think some people are so afraid of adopting these new technologies?
Because I think the issue here is they have a fear of being replaced. And it happens when you all of a sudden come into an environment where you're not the smartest. And I think the biggest element is, I don't think there needs to be a fear for it. It's just a matter of how we use it. And if you have enough, leaders and organizations stepping into the space of cultivating a new way of thinking, we should be okay with how we use technology. But it will ultimately become the mirror a reflection of who we are in a few years. So if we see big kind of job losses and environments where people just don't have any opportunities, it's because we have a problem with humanity. It's not that technology replaced us, it's that we used it to replace us.
Oh, that's interesting. And what does the future of FeedFlex Creatives look like?
For me, right now, it is starting on the conversation of building out dynamic frameworks and coming in to activate that rich data conversation into creating really precision targeting, and using the interface to upskill traditional teams to be more data centric. I hope in the future I can expand myself into the conversation of a mid-layer app, getting some investment to start automating a lot of those kind of ideas of thinking and breaching out more immersive creative strategies. So big 3D modeling, augmented experiences, but kind of dynamically changing in the components of your data.
Interesting. And there's one thing you touched on briefly that I'd like to just ask about is mentorship. Have mentors played a role in your career so far?
Yeah, they have. I do have some mentors that I work with, people that are experienced in data leadership, and I've been able to lean on them for understanding, what the biggest points of value is right now. I wanted to say now that they are launching a book, but I'm not going to say it because they need to do that on their own time. But I got to read a bit of it in the draft phases before publishing, and it became like the holy grail to my existence, because it taught me the importance of how we look at the value of things, because data is challenging our own currencies and economies, and it's going to give us a future thinking. And these mentors have allowed me to not be crippled by my fear of limitations, and to be bold enough to understand that, being somebody that sees further into the future doesn't mean that you need to shy away when you don't fit in, but to rather take it and pioneer it with a culture of thinking. So it's where the birth of data culture for me came from. So I attribute that to good mentors.
And how did you go about finding these mentors?
A couple of years ago, I attended a Women in Tech conference in Cape Town in South Africa, and I was sitting at a dinner, and one of the kind of leaders there said to me, she asked me what I saw myself doing in the future, and I said to her I was trying to bridge from internet services into data. And she said to me, the first thing you need to do is get yourself a mentor that's already leading in data spaces. So there was actually a list that was created of leaders that you could reach out to, and she connected the dots. And from that day, I've just been working with this mentor, meeting every so often and getting ideas.
Yeah, that's really cool. I think it's important for people to understand that like a mentor is not just going to come to you. You need to be proactive about it. But people are willing to help if you just reach out and ask.
Absolutely. I contacted CEO of a major bank in Africa on LinkedIn. And when I launched my business, I reached out to a few leaders. Um, and I did it because I knew I was in new territory, a space that I didn't think of yet. So, and I just simply asked them, I told them a little bit about who I am. I said, would you 30 minutes sit down and have a conversation with me? And I had so many like overwhelming responses. People are willing to share ideas and to shape you, especially leaders that are invested in the future.
Yeah, I agree. It's very important to remember. Um,
Yeah.
Before I end every conversation, I ask my guests if they have a question for me.
Yeah, I definitely do. So, I mean, you probably sit around so many unique conversation. I think, first of all, this podcast is so great.
Thank
Another
you.
excuse. I think it's absolutely brilliant. You working in the content creation space yourself, like, what are your thoughts on how you see data and automation and kind of generative AI? Do you have any fear in harboring that you see?
Um, no, I have no fears. Um, I think most of the people that do have fears are the ones who normally are fearful of new technologies and things. I think new technology and technological advancement is inevitable. And so I think we need to embrace it and work with it and be at the forefront of it by just testing, using it, trying new things, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't. Um, and like you said, it's changing so fast, but or like even something like Runway that's creating AI generated video. I would say that it's not there yet, but we've
Mhm.
already seen Adidas create or I think someone created an Adidas spec advert that looked flawless like an advert, and now people are pushing Adidas to make the tracksuits that were in that advert. And so there's the level of output is getting to a place where like it's going to be difficult to distinguish whether it was human made or not. But I don't really think that's a problem. It's going to be it's going to just change strategy and like how you differentiate yourself and stand out from the crowd because everyone's going to have the tools to just create. So there's going to be an overwhelming amount of increase in content, um, and so it's gonna the strategies are gonna have to change to be able to stick out, to resonate with your audiences, and whether it's advertising or creating content, I really think like conversations like this and like actual human interaction is going to become even more valuable when it becomes so easy to just spin up an ad or a piece of content in a couple seconds because the AI just knows what works.
I like that. Yeah, it's a really refreshing way to look at it. I think it's really important for people to listen to what you're saying right there. They're feeling a little nervous. It's probably come from a place of kind of just traditionally being that way or thinking that way.
Yeah, and it's just important. Like these tools are made to be easy to use. I mean, like if if it's confusing at the moment, it's going to get easier to use over time. So then maybe just give it a month or two because that's how fast these things work. But like it's just you on a computer. There's no one watching. Just like test,
Yeah.
play around. Like there's no harm, and you can come up with. I'm really enjoying playing around with Galileo and V0 at the moment, which are both UI AI tools, and V0 actually writes the JS script for you. So yeah, I'm just learning about how to create full websites and landing pages without knowing how to code by just getting the AI to write the code for you.
Perfect.
So it's like, yeah, it takes a while and it can get frustrating. There's errors, but the AI can also solve those errors. So if an error comes up, you just tell it that there's an error and it'll figure it out. So yeah, I just think these tools are really, really cool and that everyone should be just messing around with them at least.
Yeah, I agree. I certainly like the idea of the fact that it is still so flawed. I think I would have been deeply disappointed if AI rolled out and it was just perfect, because it does give us the opportunity to both test ourselves and the machine. So there's this kind of co-learning happening in this space. So like you're saying, you don't really know code, but because of the errors happening, you're probably learning more about code environments than you know knew anything of before. So completely agree.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thanks for joining me today, Veronica. I really appreciate it. People want to find out more about you and Feedflex Creatives. Where can they do so?
Cool. Thank you so much for having me, Byron. It's been really great to be here with you. If they're looking to learn a little bit more about Feedflex Creatives, you can just go to feedflexcreatives.com, or you can DM me directly on LinkedIn and I'm happy to have a chat.
Great. Thanks. Chat soon. Thanks for listening. I really appreciate you making it all the way to the end. I hope you enjoyed the episode. One more quick reminder before you go. I have a weekly newsletter by the same name, Another Excuse, where I cover 4 topics: something that has changed my perception, a tool that could be useful to you, content that is actually worth consuming, and a concept that I try break down and explain. If this sounds of any interest to you and you need a kick up the arse, then you can subscribe at the link below. Thanks for joining me again, and I'll see you next week.